Hope you had a good week. There has been some quite interesting events last week with the events that's happening in the European zone, and there was a lot of tension that happened into the market or came into the market before the so-called announcement came out. And anyway, we were going to see the repercussions of these moves. And so first of all, let's look at the dollar index. And as you see here, the day before the basic announcement of an agreement and Britain's basically saying that it's going to veto the agreement. What happened is that the dollar pushed higher, and once the news came out, the dollar eased up, and there is a sense, or there is a feeling. This is what you're going to see from the charts right now, because they're quite interesting. Is that the dollar has broken through several selling points, or the euro and the pound is beginning to come above several selling points. And to us, that's an indication now that maybe we're going to get a bigger pause in the US dollar, and we should be looking maybe for the commodities or the other. I'll see how they're going to work out. If you look at the euro, which is again the center of the attention, you see that we had some sort of a positive reaction to the the news, or to the conference, and it's not that magnificent news, but as this stands, this is a buy signal, because we did sell below the low of 132.88, and then we turned back and we closed based on the index at 133.71, and we know based upon the spot cash, or the future, or the cash in the euro, is that our buy signal is the 133.34. So we already have a buy signal on the euro. If we look at the British pound, this too is quite interesting, because we had a sell signal based upon a trade when it went above the 157.20. It's on the spot cash 157.20, and it failed and it turned down. We had this basic sell signal in the pound, and that sell signal was again the opposite move to it, is that the dollar is going up. And if you look, if I take you back to the dollar, you would see that Thursday the dollar was going up and it turned around, and we have a major sell signal on the dollar here. So we have a buy signal on the pound, we have a buy signal on the euro. If we look at the Australian dollar, look at this. This is a major buy signal, and you can see the big retracement, or the big tail, from the sharp sell-off that we had in the Aussie, and now we're coming back. You got 1, 2, 3, 4 buy signals, actually 5 buy signals on the Australian dollar, and we want to make sure that it takes out the high before we actually take it. If we look at the Canadian, that move again, that is another buy signal on the Canadian dollar. We had a major sell-off in the CAD, and then it turned back around and it's beginning to move up. The Japanese yen is still not giving us any. It's in a sideways pattern. It's in what we call an acceptance zone, but the bias is still to the downside. It is fundamentally the strongest currency out there, fundamentally the strongest currency, but everybody is aware that the Japanese government wants to suppress the Japanese yen, so you're not really getting this serious buying coming in, and so we can say that this is kind of neutral. If you look at the Swiss franc, this is also, as you can see right here from the last week or so, the whole 4 or 5 days you are in a very, very, very tight range, and this daily close is within the last 5 days close, and it is considered a sell signal. What you have right there is a weak currency. It is closer to the low or to the structure point, which is the 107.49. It closed the week at 107.18, 108.19, so this means we are still looking for a push. We wanted to test and trade below the 107, so we have that. The Swiss is quite weak. We have the Japanese is neutral, and we see that the euro, we have a buy signal on the euro, we have a buy signal on the British pound, and I'm sorry, on the New Zealand, this is the British pound. And you have a buy signal on the Canadian, and of course all of these are trading vis-a-vis the US dollar, so we have a major sell signal on the US dollar. When I say a major sell signal, I want you to look at the chart in front of you. We are pretty much in a range. With all the events that's going on, with all the bad news in the euro, this thing about up here, with all the good news, it came down. It is within a range. Yes, we have a sell signal. Our initial bias is to the downside, but all of them, you don't have the one that gives us a very clear buy signal, and is the Australian dollar. That's the one with the strongest buy signal, and therefore our first bias would be to buy. And I want to tell you an observation or something that I have learned over the years. Whenever you look at a chart like this and it is without exception technically a very strong buy, everybody that looks at this says this is 100% buy, everything is guaranteed to be a buy. When the easy trade so far is going to be a buy, this is the time where you have to be very careful and very cautious. So right now we trade what we see. This is, as I said, a very powerful setup. This is a strong buy signal. Having said that, because it is such an obvious setup, because it's such an obvious clear signal, we are going to be very careful when we trade into that direction, because we do not want to be caught in a trap. And the way we do that, we are only going to buy it when it takes out the high. And when it takes out these lows, if it takes out these lows, then we're going to be sellers. So we are going to be buyers of the Aussie, but extremely cautious, because this is so much, it's so clear, so evident, and it looks like to be too easy, and therefore we have to be extremely careful. We're not going to contest it, we're not going to deny the signal, we're going to take the signal, but based upon the rules. Okay, so with that, our bias would be, we're going to be buyers of the Australian dollar, we're looking to buy the Aussie, and we are looking also to buy the euro. The euro is the second one that I need to buy because it has a clearer buy signal than the, but it's not as strong as the Aussie. So I'm going to give it 2 pluses, so it's the second in line. The third to be a buy is the pound. It's not, it's pretty much as equal to the negative that we have in the US dollar. Look at this, you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 days. All of them closing in the same range. All the closes are within those between the close of all those last 10 days. It didn't give us a positive move to the upside, nor did it give us a negative move to the downside. So this is a pretty neutral currency because again we have no direction, but still if I'm gonna get a bias for the pound, the bias is still to the downside, and we are below the 157.20 that we have on the index. So therefore, as long as we're below the 157.20, we're still, our bias is to the short side. But based on that, we have a kind of a weak buy signal. So I'm going to put it as a weak buy signal. I'm just going to give it 1 plus. Now, for the Swiss franc, we have seen it's weak. So with the Japanese, it's kind of neutral. So I'm going to go with it as a weak currency. And of course, the US dollar, which is so far technically based on the chart, the weakest currency is the US dollar. So I'm going to give it 3 dashes. That's the USD. And as far as the yen and the Swiss franc, we're going to give them at least 1 minus, so it's slightly neutral. Before we decide what we're going to buy or sell, I want you to see something, a couple of other things which relates to commodities. If you look at gold, gold, as you can see here, we have a minor buy signal. It is still technically short. It is in a price acceptance zone. We don't have a continuation to the upside. So this here, gold, is technically weak. And gold is one of the sensitive things, is that its strength, or one of is primarily as a hedge to the decline of value or to the decline in currencies or in the dollar per se. So that move to the upside here is not really something that we can question with regards to the decline that we had in the dollar. Yes, this is a minor buy signal, but the low of this day is 1707, 1707, and all what we did was to muster a close at 117.06. So that's another caution sign. Remember, I was telling you the easy trade is to sell the dollar. So if that's the case, I need to see everything that's confirming that. That is not really something that is saying to us, go and sell the dollar. If that was the case, we would have seen a very big push to the upside in gold. The same thing is with silver. There is not really money moving too hard or too big into the precious metal as of yet. Maybe silver is actually a little bit better than gold. It might be stronger than gold in this case because you don't have a sell signal and we're still on a buy. Last but not least is the crude oil. And this here is the telltale. On Thursday we had a big sell-off. It actually took out the stops on the long-term system, which was around 98.20. 97 signal, yeah, 98.57. This is where we sold it at, 98.57. This was the buy right there. But what happened is this: on the following day, on Friday, we started selling in down the day, and then we turned around and we closed. That is a buy signal if there is one. So we have a buy signal on crude, we have a neutral signal on gold, or no signal on gold. We have really no signal on silver. And if you look at the other stuff, all of them are kind of weak, which again goes back to this: all the commodities are basically dollar related, and they would move mostly against the US dollar. And if the dollar is like this, is neutral, that's an indication, and without having a sell-off, that's an indication that the moves is not, I mean, if you look at all the other currencies, all other commodities, that's the only one that's been selling off, which is the soybeans. And it's not really, but anyway, so just to wrap it up, that we don't have a clear cut 100% direction in any way. In most of the currencies, we don't have a telltale from the commodities, we don't have clarity from. All what we have right now is a general indication, which is good, that the Australian dollar is strong. We have a general indication that the dollar is weak, so that will be our first pair. The second pair would be the Australian dollar with the Japanese yen and the Swiss franc. So I can be going long the Aussie, short the dollar, or long the Aussie, short the yen, long the Aussie, short the Swiss. I may go long the dollar, the euro, and the dollar. I may, in that case, go with the euro yen, go long the euro and the yen, and the euro Swiss. The last choice would be the British pound. I will take it against the dollar if it goes above the 157, and I might go with the pound yen and the pound Swiss. Okay, so our bias is the Aussie dollar, and then the Aussie yen, the Aussie Swiss. Then we're going to take the euro dollar, euro yen, euro Swiss, than the pound dollar, pound yen, and pound Swiss. Okay, that is for the indices right now. Let me save the recording and